Hello, this is Faith at Faith&books. I'm a little under the weather. I've got a sore throat, so I probably shouldn't be talking. But it's a rainy Sunday afternoon. We got up, went to church, went out to breakfast, and now we're home and I'm sort of collapsing, sipping some tea with honey. And I just thought that I would do a little bit of a video, which is prompted by the favorite authors tag. Now, I was not tagged, but I'm sort of butting in and just including myself. I think the guy who made this list into a tag is named Steve Donahue, maybe. And I've watched a few of his videos. He's very entertaining. And he made it into a tag, and I got to him through Grim Reads, which is a booktube I really enjoy, and then someone else did it to Richardson Reads. I really like his books, the books he talks about too. He's a good booktube channel. Anyway, I'm just getting into the booktube world, but I thought I would do this tag as well, just for fun. It's a kind of long tag because the way it's set up is you do 5 of your top favorite authors, 4 maybes or like alternates, that's what I think of them as, and then 6 not quite your favorite but up there. So, but that makes for a long video. So I'm just going to make this the not quites, the 6 not quite top favorite writers. And that way, then I'll do another video with the maybes, and another one with the top 5 favorites. So I'm pulling up my list here. Anyway, so here it goes. These are the 6 authors that I love, but they're not quite up at the. It's very hard to winnow down to your favorites. It's hard to make lists like this. So, for now, this is it. My first not quite author is Mary Roberts Rinehart. I think she's a little bit obscure. She's known as the American Agatha Christie, though she wrote probably a couple decades before Agatha Christie. She wrote in the 1900s and teens, I think mostly, and her books are usually set in Pittsburgh or New York or in that area, New York and Pennsylvania. And I think she started writing because her husband got sick and she had to bring in some money. A lot of women authors are like that, it seems, like Harriet Beecher Stowe and things. But I love her books. She's just reliable. I know if I pick up one of her books, I'm going to enjoy it. She wrote a lot of mysteries. One of her famous ones is The Bat, which apparently inspired Batman, though that's kind of tenuous. And she's the one that wrote the book that says the butler did it. She's the one that coined that in one of her books. She wrote one of the funniest books I've ever read called Bab, a Sub-Deb. It's a scream. I highly recommend it. Some of her books are just novels that can be kind of dark. Some of them are, there are lots of mysteries. Some of them are funny, but she's always a reliable read. So I really enjoy her. So she would be one of my not quites. The next one, I haven't read that much by him, but what I have read, I've absolutely adored. And he's David McCullough, the historian. When I read his works, he just draws you in. He writes in such a gracious way. He really absorbs me. He absorbs me. He finds the whole story, the history that he relates so compelling. I just get completely steeped in it. So I really enjoy him, and I want to read more. I still look back with fondness on reading Mornings on Horseback about the youth and the early years of Teddy Roosevelt. That was just a fantastic read. So I really like David McCullough, and I want to read more by him. The next one is Willa Cather. I've read almost everything she's written, maybe not quite. And there are some books she's written that weren't my favorite. Like, I never got through Song of the Lark. I didn't think One of Ours worked. But some of her books I absolutely love and have reread many times, like Shadow on the Rocks and Death Comes for the Archbishop and My Antonia, Oh Pioneers, just Sapphira and the Slave Girl. I read a lot of her books, and she's pretty reliable. I really like her writing. She was actually born just in Winchester, Virginia, which is about an hour and some minutes away from here. And the other week we went apple picking in that area, and we drove past a road called Cather Road, and I thought, I wonder if that has anything to do with Willa Cather's family, because that was the area that she came from before she moved out to Nebraska. So anyway, Willa Cather would also make my not quites list. The next one is Dorothy Al Sayers. I went through a real Lord Peter Wimsey craze. I really enjoyed reading those. Some of them didn't work for me. There's one about golf that I just couldn't get into. And I think the one, and all the titles are escaping my mind right now, but the one where Lord Peter, this is a spoiler, Lord Peter proposes and actually gets accepted by Harriet Vane, that one where they go back to, is it Oxford or is it Cambridge? Anyway, they go back to their prestigious college, and I think he proposes in Latin. That one to me was just over the top pretentious. I think if you actually attended the college, you would get a lot more out of it, but since I didn't, and it's a really foreign world to me, I didn't quite get that one. But I love The Nine Tailors. That's my favorite one. I just think the atmosphere and the mystery are so well done. And I love the Busman's Honeymoon, where they go on their honeymoon and Harriet Vane realizes that she married a guy who really does have post-traumatic stress syndrome, like shell-shocked. He was in World War I, and he comes back really damaged, and he's still damaged. He's brilliant, and he loves her, but he's damaged, and she's realizing that on their honeymoon. So that was a really good book, too. So Dorothy Al Sayers, I really like her. And she wrote a play called The Man Who Would Be King, which is a Christmas play, and I've never gotten it. Every year I say to myself, I'm going to read it for Christmas, and then I never have. So maybe this year will be the year. But Dorothy Al Sayers, I really like her. Then the next not quite is C.S. Forrester, who wrote the Horatio Hornblower series. It's a whole series. Is it 6 books? It's been a while since I've read them, but I've read them several times, and they have a dear place in my heart. They were one of my father's favorites, and when I first got married, he lent the first book in the series to my husband, and my husband sort of dutifully, as a new son-in-law, read it, but then he loved it, and my husband went on to read the whole thing and become really, really interested in naval history, and it just spanned out to learning all about the Napoleonic Wars, the War of 1812. I mean, he just went on this rabbit trail for years after reading that series by C.S. Forrester, and he also wrote The African Queen. So, and he wrote a history of the War of 1812, I believe. I think we have that. Anyway, so C.S. Forrester, he's just, I've reread those books. They're just such a good comfort read. So that would be my 5th, not quite. And the last one is kind of an obscure author, although she's living, but she's a Catholic writer. Her name is Heather King. There's another Heather King who writes like Harlequin historical romances. This is not the same person. Heather King, that I'm talking about, writes spiritual memoirs. And she's a baby boomer, maybe 10 years older than me, so I'm 59, maybe she's in her late 60s. And she just sort of, lived the reckless life of the 1960s sort of revolution, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And her teens through, I think, until she was 30, she was basically drunk. She was an alcoholic. And then she managed to go sober. And she winds up moving to Los Angeles from New England, where she lived. And then she, in midlife, she converts to Catholicism. And she writes about her conversion. I mean, basically, these books are just spiritual memoirs of her conversion and how she sees God in her life, and how, even before her conversion, and how every stage of her life, how her spirituality interacts with it, basically. I'm not putting it well, and she is a genius at expressing the interior life. And because she's so contemporary, she's dealing with everything that the modern secular world throws at you. And she writes so well. She's really absorbing, and you just recognize yourself, or at least I do. She just is very, very good. I've read Parched and Shirt of Flame and Redeemed and Stumbled. She wrote a bunch. I haven't read them all. I've read about half. But I really like her, Heather King. Really, really gripping, just so eloquent in describing that interior spiritual life that we all have going on underneath the surface. So those are my 6 not quites. Mary Roberts Rinehart, David McCullough, Willa Cather, Dorothy Al Sayers, C.S. Forrester, and Heather King. And I will make another video about my maybes and my top 5 favorite books. Anyway, bye.